when you up the field of consciousness remotely, in this case, roughly 7,000 miles away, the impact on the cells that we had, it the rapidity with which they heal was shocking.
Hi.
How's it going?
Good. Hold on. Let me like rearrange. I'm. I wish I could. I wish I could spin this around and show you. I'm on this patio. Oh, actually, I'm on the patio at that hotel that you stayed at when you came out to Santa Monica one time.
Oh, yeah. I love that photo.
Yeah, I
That's
know.
great.
It's super cute. It has such good energy here. So, and I'm in transit, but I popped into here because I figured it's a good spot.
Yeah, I'm propped up with my handy quantum block, juicing myself
there's
up.
mine. Are you? I wish I could stick my head in that. Mine's right there. My little travel can't leave home without it. Block is right there. So, anyway, so tell me, I miss you. What's going on? People are just gonna listen to us hang for a second. Actually,
Yeah,
what are we gonna talk about today? We can at least go through. We can go through topics.
Yeah, well, we've got some cool stuff. I think
Mhm.
Philip, I finally quantified all of the data that we've been doing research on, and we actually we've been talking about how we were able to get ATP increases remotely, and so this is one of those
What?
experiments, and so it's a little peculiar because it was a double-blinded experiment. So we had the guys in Switzerland and then the
Mhm.
guys here in Oklahoma with me, and it was double-blinded. We plated all these cells,
Mhm.
and we were running ATP assays on them in a time course sequence. So you
Whoa.
put luciferase on them, or cell titer glow in this case, and
Mhm.
you run them through, and you see how much ATP is produced. And so we did this from, I took pictures. The guys here didn't know which cells were which, and the
Mhm.
guys in Switzerland just had an image, and that's all they had of the
Mhm.
cells. So they, of course, didn't know which were which. And I just said, okay, these are the ones that are going to be affected. And I sent them the pictures. They put them in the charging apparatus,
Mhm.
and it was for the quantum upgrade, and that's what we were
Mhm.
testing. And there was an immediate jump in the ATP production, and so I finally quantified it, and I'll send you the data so you can post it. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah,
So
send
the
it.
jump, one of the jumps was 29%, which is
Whoa,
insane. I
it's
mean, that's the thing.
crazy. In
It kind of
seconds.
blows me away because I'm the guy doing the experiment, but I was still like, what? I mean, it's a
Whoa.
crazy jump. And the
Mhm.
thing that's really cool to me is what it kind of implicitly shows is, one, there's a connection between particles regardless of distance, right? So
Mhm.
you can really say this is sort of like the smoking gun of quantum biology, because it
Mhm.
definitively shows non-local interaction between cells, and
Mhm.
then, or I should say, cells and energy, right? So
Mhm.
the intent of the people in this case, the quantum upgrade, expressed remotely, and then the output in the cells. And we did it, in quadruplicate in terms of the experiment, and we ran everything in triplicate.
Mhm.
So I have statistical error bars and deviations and everything. So there was no chance that it was just an aberration. And every time we did it, it would always hit only the cells that I picked out.
Wow.
And that's what's crazy about it,
Wow.
is so not only does it tell us that there's a non-local interaction, but it also tells us that there's some connecting underlying intelligence that knows what's what,
Mhm.
which is
So
which is
wild.
kind of like, I mean, it's mind-blowing to realize that everything is definitively connected, and there's an
Mhm.
overarching intelligence that connects and permeates all things. I mean, the more you get into the science of this, the more it sounds like the writers of Star Wars. Like, oh, it's the Force. It pervades and
And
goes.
yes.
Through.
Well, it is the
It
force.
is the Force, and consciousness. I mean, that's
Mhm.
one of the things I've been thinking, is that everybody kind of approaches, at least in biochemistry, everybody kind of approaches things from the physical standpoint.
Mhm.
When in fact, this clearly shows that we are far more a thought than a thing, and
Mhm.
that physicality is the epiphenomenon of consciousness, and
Mhm.
not the other way around, right? We're not
Right.
conscious because we have a body. We have a body because we're conscious.
Right.
And it's just the coolest stuff to actually have the data in hand and go, damn, wow. That's
Like,
what this means.
that's so amazing. Well, let's like back up for a second because let's prep the audience. So let's start with how you pick the cells. So
Sure.
let's start with how you pick the cells so that we can get everyone on the same page as you, walk them through the process of that experiment.
Hmm.
So let's step by step it. So you've got the cells. How do you
Okay,
pick the ones?
so I picked out two different types of cells. So there's A549s, which are a type of immortalized cell, so a cancerous cell. And in
Mm-hmm.
this case, they were immortalized but not transformed. So
Mm-hmm.
they're a cancerous cell. And then the other set of cells were human dermal fibroblasts, so HDFs.
Mm-hmm.
And those are just standard healthy cells.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea was to use both healthy cells and sick cells to see if there was a difference.
Mm-hmm.
And you saw the same trend in both. They both jumped. And then to make it even kind of more specific, we did both types of cells in different types of cell culture media. So we used an L15 and then an L15 with glucose. L15 media is basically like it's almost like if you were on a ketogenic diet. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like if you're in ketosis. And so we use that to mimic the ketogenic space and then a glycolytic environment after we added the glucose. So
Mm-hmm.
just kind of a normal standard sugar rich environment, like if you're eating a lot of carbs. And it happened in all four sets. So the HDFs in both types, the ketogenic and the glycolytic, and then with the A549s and ketogenic and glycolytic too.
Mm-hmm.
And every time it spikes up, just kind of miraculous. I mean, it's not miraculous, but it's still just so far out of the norm of
Mm-hmm.
what we have been taught
Mm-hmm.
that it just breaks the paradigm a bit.
Right. Well, we're almost we're trying to relearn. We're trying to unlearn and relearn, right?
Yeah.
So okay, so let's back it up again. So everyone on here, so we know what type of cells that I am picked. So let's walk the audience through the visual. What are you looking at?
Okay.
Where you've got so we're in your lab, we're in the lab,
Hmm.
we've got these dishes. Where's the block? But there's no block because we're talking about the quantum upgrade today.
Right.
So let's walk us through the visual as if we're there with you and this is happening. Someone goes, my brain is spinning. Mine too. It's scrambled.
You're not alone. Mine
Mm-hmm.
was as well, and I was doing the experiment. So, okay, so I have a biochem professor who didn't know what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
Take a cell well, which is a 96 well plate, which is if you kind of pictured like the back of a book, but just a hair smaller, and then if you took your finger and pressed in little divots 96 times.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so then we fill those with different cells, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that we have a ton of cells. That way we can do the experiment in triplicate, and we
Mm-hmm.
can also do it on time courses. So with one row, we'll have all the cells that we run at the 0 point to see what the output of
Mm-hmm.
ATP was to set a baseline.
Right.
Then we'll have the next row and we'll run those 7 minutes later and then 7 minutes after that. And so I'll have a
Mm-hmm.
7-minute time point, a 14-minute time point. So you'd be basically looking at this little white tray with all these little fingertip sized divots in it that are
Mm-hmm.
filled with cells. And so take that and we shake it, incubate it, and get everything ready. Then we'll put cell titer glow, which is just a compound that has a thing called luciferase, and it's luminescent basically. So
Mm-hmm.
you hit it with a specific frequency of light, and it will only emit light if ATP has been produced. And because it's dealing with photons, it's
Mm-hmm.
incredibly accurate. So in this case, we use a citation 8, and I know like in David Sinclair's lab, he's got a cell citation 10, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's basically it's the same thing. So we're looking for the output, and because it's photons, it's incredibly specific. So we can see down to the molecule how many molecules of this have been expressed.
Mm-hmm.
And so
So
we'll
cool.
put the cell titer glow on,
Mm-hmm.
and then we'll put it back in and run the thing. Then we'll pull it out and then shake it, do another drop of cell titer glow, put it back in the counter, and read it at every time point. And it's a little tricky because you've got to take it out and put it back in an incubator, then pull it out, put everything in with a pipette. So we pipe that in
Mm-hmm.
the cell titer glow, and then take it back over to the reader and put it in the
Mm-hmm.
citation and read it,
Mm-hmm.
and then take it back out. and just consistently do that. And so we're aggregating data sets
Mhm.
over time, and we're just
Mhm.
watching, basically filling out an Excel sheet. So the computer fills out an Excel sheet with all of the time point data and how
Mhm.
many cells we have over the particular amount of time.
Mhm.
Then once all that's done, it's just basically a page filled with numbers. And so you can't really tell much other than in this case, it was pretty dang obvious. I could actually
Mhm.
look at the number and go like, holy cow. Hey, it's on.
Mhm. Oh, you made it! Yay!
Oh my God. Yeah, I made it. And I don't have any headphones or anything, but it needs to work like this. At least I made it because there was a huge fire, actually, not just an accident. And I'm glad I'm here
Ah,
now.
we're glad you're there and you're safe. And actually, you sound great. So you don't even need the headphones. It's really, really crystal clear.
Awesome.
So,
Yeah, we're
mhm.
nerding out on the experiment. I was talking about the last experiment that I quantified, the one that you got the data from this morning. So
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. So what we're doing is we're walking the audience through the visual of how Ian ran the experiment, because as we're hearing it, it's a little hard to sort of conceptualize what it is. I want to take them from, the experiment to that Excel sheet, that you got with all the data points this morning. So you're walking them through, you're quantifying, you're shaking it up, you're checking it again. Let's um uh let's go back and explain a little bit for anyone that joined on, popped off, because I see the numbers moving a little bit. Again, what you have your tray and
Got your
you
tray,
put the
which
cells.
is a cell plate. So a
Right.
96 well plate, which
Hmm.
is just a little rectangular plate with 96 little fingertip sized divots in it that are all filled with cells. So
Yes.
then
So let's stop right there.
okay.
So what type of cells? So
So
that.
human
Mhm.
dermal fibroblasts and
Mhm.
then A549s, which are a type of cancerous cell. So we could
Mhm.
look at healthy cells as well as sick cells. So we
Mhm.
in two different types of cell culture media, one in L15, so we could look at a ketogenic environment, and then one in L15 with glucose, so we could look at a glycolytic environment. So we could see, is this going to be an effect that only affects you if you're in ketosis, or if it
Mhm.
affects you across the board? And in this case, as it turns out, it affects everything across the board, very, very markedly so. And the data was really obnoxiously conclusive. I would
Mhm.
say it was funny because Philip and I have been talking about this for a little while, but we always said that, like a 25% jump. And when I went back and actually quantified all the numbers, it was actually the peak was a 29% jump.
Mhm.
Ridiculous. I mean, it really it's such a good outcome that it just makes me kind of go, wow, okay. And
Okay.
it's very cool to be in there, So the cell plate, jumping back, so we take the cell plate, we fill it with different cells, different types of
Mhm.
cells, then we
Mhm.
let those sit for a second, and then we'll go back and put cell titer glow in the first row of
Mhm.
cells of each type so that we can set a
Mhm.
baseline. So then we read how much ATP is coming off, and how that happens is the cell titer glow triggers a reaction, but it only reacts if ATP has been produced. Then
Okay.
when the light shines on it, it emits
Yes.
photons, and pick up the numbers and count the photons.
Mhm. So so basically you're seeing, you can count them because they're glowing.
Right.
And that's what
That's
I
it.
sort of want people to visualize, that what's changed, you can actually visually see because it's glowing.
Yeah, and it's
Mhm.
incredibly specific. There's a thing called a photomultiplier, and it
Mhm.
literally receives the photons that are coming off. So
Mhm.
depending on the strength of the light, that correlates precisely to the number of molecules of ATP that have been produced. So there's not really any guesswork. It's very, very precise, and we can see exactly how much is produced. And so that's why I feel really comfortable now, because this was the, I think, fourth time we've run the experiment, and
Mhm.
we've done everything in triplicate, and so we have statistical deviations to show the error. And the reason that's important is because when you're doing something like this, there's always the chance that maybe you get a random occurrence or something happens only in one plate. But when you
Mhm.
run it in triplicate, you can see if all of the compounds, like if all the cells move up and every compound jumps in terms of its ATP output, you're looking at it and you go, okay, it's not just something that's happening as a one-off. It's happening
Mhm.
across the board in all three of these different wells that have been plated with this thing. And then
Mhm.
over time, yeah, go ahead.
So I'm getting a lot of questions saying, what did you guys do? what did you do? And then there's questions saying, how long did you do it? Obviously, there's people jumping on wondering if this is a product or if this is quantum upgrade. So let's just pause right there and explain
Okay.
what's happening and why we're getting these results, and then we
All
can
right.
get back into the
Philip,
results.
why don't you take this one, Philip? You can handle it that side.
I mean, just for people to understand that may be completely new to this. So technology that we developed that can imprint pure natural quantum energy in the object, and it can be leveraged by any physiological organism, whether that's a plant, an animal, or a human. Frankly, it doesn't really matter. And a lot of different experiments. There have been tons of different studies. Now, this specific study is quite exciting because it's new than others done before. It was done in a lab in a university, run by a professor, and Ian was so kind to actually help the professor so that it also can be double blinded, because the professor been on his own, it not been double blinded. So ATP production, I don't know if that was said before, that's the energy production of the human cells, obviously. And I think you talked about the cells. You're basically leveraging our technology in order to charge cells and control group that is not charged, so that you can see actually the difference, right? And that's pretty much what the experiment was. And to my knowledge, I think you guys took like 5 or 6 measurements over a 1 hour period of time in the ATP study, right? Is that correct?
Right. That's correct. Yeah.
So, and already after 5 minutes, which is the very, very interesting part, actually, I think it was already up 20%. It moved further to 25%. As Ian said, it peaked at some point at 29%. So that's quite remarkable. And for people to understand, I mean, I would honestly call that a medical breakthrough, because you may be able to get to such ATP level increases with all kinds of different stuff that you do, but you have to do all of these things together usually, and certainly not in a completely non-invasive way, right? Where you don't even ingest anything. You don't, I mean, it's literally like you press a button basically, or put your hand into a block, and that's pretty much what happens. So that is, it's quite amazing, and it's so cool to see that literally with human cells. You get goosebumps seeing that. That it's just energy. Yeah, it's quite some powerful energy actually, because it changes. And yeah, I think it gets even more exciting because ATP production is one of those things that may be hard for people to understand, but you need it for everything. You must live, right? Because if you don't have ATP production, you don't live. You're dead. So you kind of want it, right? And then
kind of, just a little bit.
What the most undersold thing I've ever heard, man.
You kind of want ATP production.
It's like air. You kind of want it.
Sort of.
So if you play chess, if you think about anything, if you study for something, all mental processes basically, you want your ATP to work really well for anything physical, whether that's a healing process because you got sick, whether it's I don't know, a tennis Wimbledon final that you need to play. You want to have your optimal ATP production, just so people understand, like, what do I even need it for? Yeah.
So we're getting questions, and probably because people have just jumped on and off. It's questions, and I know the answer, but I want you guys to answer. What did you do? Did you put it in the block? Which block? And it's not the block. I mean, the blocks do this too, but in this case, that's not what they did in this experience. So maybe let's just break that down a little bit more, because again, I think without seeing, it's hard, for people to really grasp that. So I'm sure we're trying to walk them through that process. So we're looking at this assay. We're looking at this tray with these cells and the photons and the luminance, and
because we're not talking about quantum upgrade, and this is actually a quantum upgrade. So it was done over distance, which is on its own, even that we are able to do this for distance. And frankly, it doesn't matter if it's 10 meters, if it's 100 miles, or if it's 10,000 miles, it literally does not matter. This was done over distance. You can certainly achieve these results also if the blocks. However, it depends what type of block you have. And I assume that with something like quantum blocks, you get way lower results. For example, you'll still get an increase because it's still the same type of energy in there. And then you can get to, if you have a travel block would do most likely the same that we've been able to go over distance, and then the ramp up, may take further.
So I'm getting questions. People are like, what did you guys do? So let's back up again. So what distance, what happened, where?
Honestly, I feel like we should move on from this topic because we've said it already 3 times what we did, and it's would it be fun to talk about other things?
Yes.
But I don't know. We can also repeat it one more time. You tell us.
Well, I don't think there are some people that aren't. There are people here that get it. They're part of our community. They're like, that's epic. 29%. Give it to me. They get it. And then there's some people that are not understanding what happened at a distance. So I know, let's repeat it one more time.
Okay.
And then let's take what we're saying. This is what we've seen. And this is where we can then, this is where else we can do it, and how else we can do it and have fun with, what we can do in our day to day, and how we can upgrade ourselves and our bodies. Yeah, someone just said still don't know. So I just want to make sure people know and get it.
So I'm going to wrap it now together with a healing study, because pretty much the same thing was done. It was just a slightly different experiment, right? So it's a setup where you could use blocks, quantum blocks, travel blocks, and so on, and just put petri dishes underneath with human cells, for example, right? You went actually a step further, and we used the so-called quantum upgrade system that we have. It's an advanced system that can connect a unique identifier that we place in the system with the source of that unique identifier. So, for example, Serena, we could basically use your birth date, your name, and your birth city as you get for you. If we then place you in the system, then you would be in the field, right? It's all about, if we're not broadcasting, it's very important. There's nothing broadcast. It's you're in the field at that moment. Any object, any person, for example, any pet, and we can also do it with a petri dish. So in a production study, which measures the ATP production of these cells that place into these petri dishes, that exactly what was done. So that we basically place one group of cells into the system. The professor that ran the experiment had no clue which of the cells were actually put in the system, so that it's double blinded, and full group that was not charged. And what happened is that all of the charged cells, over the whole period that it was measured, I think it was 5 times, significantly, and we're talking 28 to 29%, which is very, very high. Very high.
Yeah.
And the wound healing study was set up. We're talking cells, we're talking this system, and which, by the way, uses completely natural quantum energy. It's nothing artificial, nothing. All we invented is how we were able to concentrate and harness all of this, and how to increase the consciousness levels in a certain way. But the nature of the field is there by nature. Okay, important to understand. And in this case, and I can take over from here in a second, but they took cells that got damaged, and they damaged them on purpose with the laser, all in the same way. And then again, you have a control group of cells, and you have a group that gets charged, and then you see how fast does the wound heal. And now you wait for longer. The results were between 85% increase, or how do you say, faster wound healing, 85% faster wound healing compared to the cells that were not charged. Please feel free to add in any
Sure.
context.
Actually,
Yeah,
yeah.
and
So
I hope that makes sense. You know, I just want to make sure because some people said we're not slow, we just kind of came late to this, so we're not thinking you are. We just want to make sure we're on the same page, because we're going to introduce some new exciting things. So go ahead, Ian.
okay, so on the wound healing experiment that Philip was just referring to, so I took the same cells and had the professor plate the same cells, so human dermal fibroblasts, which are skin cells. And so the idea was if we noted a jump in ATP, well, that means that the cells are functioning more rapidly and are more robust. So for a wound healing experiment, you use a different setup. Instead of a 96 well plate, you actually take a petri dish and then you grow the cells until they're confluent, which is just they're fully formed across the surface as if you had a layer of tissue. And then you slice that layer so you create a cut uniformly across all of the cells. And then we did exactly the same thing that we did before. Some cells were charged, some cells were not charged. And again, this one was double blinded as well. So until the very end, when I would say these were actually the cells, nobody knew what was what. So no, the professor didn't know. I was the only one actually keeping the information. And the thing that I think is most interesting about this, at least to me, and I'm sure other people would find other components perhaps more or less interesting, but again, the the lack of an issue with distance is brilliant. That's kind of compelling. But the thing really that's more impressive to me is that it knows. And you could say consciousness knows or the field knows, because as Philip said, we're all part of that field. And that became very apparent because we're actually showing that the results happen regardless of distance. And for anybody who's kind of questioning that, look at the Nobel Prize in physics last year for optical interaction, right? So spooky action at a distance, as Einstein called it. And the thing that's kind of neat is people talk about like, oh, it's interacting with another object somewhere remotely. Actually, that's kind of a misnomer. What's really happening is once you entangle the waveforms, once this becomes part of the quantum upgrade, the waveform, the consciousness, it's actually all one thing. So it doesn't matter if it's on the other side of the universe, it's one thing. And so when you up the field of consciousness remotely, in this case, roughly 7,000 miles away, the impact on the cells that we had, the rapidity with which they healed was shocking. And of course, the thing that was great, and Philip, this is something that, you know, we did this as a test. It wasn't necessary, but we were curious in the lab. So after the cells were healed the first time and we knew what the vector was and how quickly it happened and all that sort of stuff, we took that and then we scratched them again and ran the same experiment, and they still healed faster, but only the charged cells. So there's some degree of permanence. Even after that goes away, there's some degree of permanence to the enhancing of the cells. So even though it was not in the quantum upgrade and effectively the impetus to heal had been taken away from that, there was still a benefit that was conveyed that persisted. And that persistent benefit is we haven't quantified it, but visibly you could see that even after they were taken out, when we did it a second time, they healed faster, which is just amazing.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing. So there's a couple thousand of you on here, and I just want to make sure you guys like let that sink in, So what does that mean? What does that mean? What can we do with this? I mean, that's one of the questions that are coming up. What does this mean? What can I do with this? And I'm handing that over to you guys, because let's take it to some of the new things that we can talk about.
So, I would, just before I answer that, put the question into the room basically to everyone. what would you do if you knew that this accelerates your wound healing by 85 to 100%? What would you do? What would you use? So I would use it for any type of recovery, any um, prophylactic, support. And anytime I'm injured, I have any form of damage within my body, that's when I would use it, right? And from my perspective, I think I would still do all the great things that I'm generally doing, get in great shape, take my wonderful supplements that I know that really add to my physical performance, recovery, and all of that. And I add that on top. But then you add that on top. And that's how I would approach it. Maybe I have some additional thoughts.
Yeah, I would use it for, and I just saw that Todd pointed this out. I'd use it for athletic performance and recovery. Just on the daily, kind of as a day-to-day thing. I keep it running because knowing how much it improves things, I would keep it the consistent function. Just let it keep going. And the other thing, I always feel kind of compelled to say this, is having seen this data live, knowing what the actual implications are. Every time you have a thought and express some intention, it creates a wave. That wave propagates in perpetuity. It doesn't stop. That's the physics of how that works. When you have a thought, there's an electrochemical impulse, and that creates literally a wave, and that will go on forever. And so the thing that I feel kind of incumbent to say is go out and just be kind to everybody because it makes a dent and it makes a difference. And when you have something like this, that's a localized field, get it for, I use it for myself, but I also have the same setup for my friends and family and the office. My whole lab, it's I actually keep blocks in places because of the effect of this, because of kind of the pervasive effect, but also the upgrade I just keep with me going in perpetuity because I know what it does. And now that I have tangible data that supports that, it's really easy to say, trust me on this. Here's the data. Do it. It's really, honestly, everybody should be doing this. If we could do this for every hospital and every psych ward and everything, every public building, the DMV specifically, if we could put this at the DMV, that would make my life infinitely easier, I think.
That wouldn't accelerate wound healing, but also some other processes, probably.
It's so true. I love it. I mean, we need it over the entire state of California. I think maybe, or at least the freeways. Someone did say, we should have this at all the hospitals. I can't remember. I have to scroll through every hospital, healthcare centers. Yes, this is what we can do. And in addition to that, what Ian said, just being really intentional with your thoughts, with your actions, with your words, that just stacks. As someone said here, it just stacks. It helps to elevate the field, and the consciousness and what we're talking about here, for everyone. So for ourselves and the ones we love, but also for everyone here. There's someone's on here saying what devices are out there that applies this to human body and tissues. So we've addressed that a bit. We can address it again briefly. I mean, if we're talking about some of the other products with Leela, it's not as much of a device. Do you guys want to answer that question?
If I can chime in first, one of the things that I do for a lot of people is I give them frequency cards if they have a specific issue. And for just kind of a standard broad spectrum, and for a standard broad spectrum, I'll send people heal capsules, and those are kind of my two go-tos. Not everybody is going to want to. Not everybody's going to want to carry around a block. I actually, and this, if I didn't know how well it worked, I probably wouldn't do this. But knowing what the impact is, I literally have them at home, at my lab, at the university, and I drive with one and travel with it. And
I hear you guys. I literally don't leave home without
Yeah.
it.
No, literally, and that's
Mhm.
kind of that's my approach now too. But for other
Mhm.
people, the heel car or the heel capsule is great, and also I think it's cool because a lot of people now I see it all over the place, which is very cool. But the frequency cards are great because if somebody has a specific issue, if they need help with their
Mhm.
testosterone levels or something that's their mood, or
Mhm.
I just get a frequency card and give it to them, and
Mhm.
super beneficial.
And that's and it's a great a great reminder, and there's so many of them. And so there's some new frequencies that I noticed, but me, I'm a junkie. I'm there all the time. So do you want to talk about some of the new frequencies that have been added and since we last chatted on here?
Ye- Yeah, so we've added the multidimensional protection frequency,
Hmm.
the primal source frequency, and the third one we added was let me think real quick. Oh, the self-love and partnership frequencies. So those are the frequencies we added. We've
Hmm.
developed them over for quite some time. Some of those were actually asked for really by the community. Multidimensional protection. And actually, I felt really bad because there was someone that asked us, I guess, for 14 or 15 months when we can find release it. And I'm not so big into protection because I think we actually don't really need to protect ourselves. I think just connect with ourselves and then expand ourselves. However, this multidimensional protect isn't really it transforms and it helps really be in our expensive state. And there is indeed, there are situations where, I mean, there's people that talk about dark entities and stuff like that. I'm not big into entities like that because in the end of the day, what it all is involves down to low vibration. It's low vibration. Let's call it dark, whatever. It's a very low frequency, a low vibration. And however that is, it's a low vibration that's coming at you. And if it's anger, for example, anger for people that let's take 10 people that are all angry, if they all at the same time send this anger to you, that's a very low vibration that's hitting your system, and then you are impacted by that unless you're really expanded and in contact with yourself. And so for things like that, all kinds of different variations of this multidimensional protection frequency is the way to go. It's pretty awesome. The self-love and partnership is one that was actually suggested by the lady that found did the millionaire matchmaker, whatever. I'm so sorry.
Oh, Patty.
Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. And I've
Mhm.
always Patty, exactly. And
Mhm.
she's amazing. But I don't watch TV, and so I did not know about this show. But then she reached out and she had this idea
Mhm.
and said, "Look, couldn't we have make a frequency that
Mhm.
helps people to find their soulmate?" And
Mhm.
but it really doesn't work that way because tons of different reasons why people don't have a perfect partner or why they don't have their partner in their life. And one reason is self-love. So
Mhm.
self-love is one you need to work on, then probably also self-awareness. And then it's also transforming some of these needs that I to have someone that fills my gaps.
Mhm.
And then the next step is really once you get that together and moving and all of that, then you will suddenly then you can add a frequency that is sort of sending out, okay, well, if I'm now in my real authentic frequency, I would love to that to be broadcast so that there can be a match basically that matches literally with my frequency, but not with the gap I have within or something like that. So it
Mhm.
was a tricky one to develop, and we took several months to work on it, and it's really good. So, I have a hard time testing it for myself because I've been married for a long time and all of that, but it feels good. So I've tested it that way at least. It feels good. It connects you with your inside. And we've heard some good feedback. So that's that. The third one would be what do we have? source frequency that, this is probably the most exciting one. It's also one though, if someone's really new to this, just take your time with it and don't use the or like overuse this frequency in the beginning, because it may be a little bit challenging, because it really reminds you of your origin.
Mm-hmm.
Breaks you away or something like that, but in a very, very subtle way. And that's what it is. So, it's hard to explain really what that frequency does. It adds a very calm energy that you feel, an expansion. You may feel more connected to home, like on a very, very subtle level. Yeah, I think that's how I would describe it.
I have like a lot of questions here. Related to the new frequencies. I feel like we could do a whole live just on what this means, primal source. And you brought up something, Philip, that I think it's good that to address is just specifically for some of these new ones, and this last one that you talked about, and it would be great if you could chime in too, is how best to use it, especially if someone is new to the community and maybe doing a card, and one of these new cards might be the first. I think with what we've talked about over the course of our chats, how someone can utilize that in the best way possible, plus with everything else too.
Yeah, I'll chime in on one part of that. And this, as the token science guy, the part that comes to mind is all of this has to do with elevated consciousness and higher levels of consciousness. And the way that has an impact is kind of like Philip was saying, with the relationships, you have to be in sync, right? Because effectively we are waveforms that have coalesced to, form a body and aggregate together. So what happens is, if you think of everything as frequencies and levels of higher consciousness, the force that you generate is dependent on things being in phase, right? If they're moving at the same rate, if you're synced up, if you're coherent, it's like attracting a partner. Things will line up. If you're in discord, if you have gaps in yourself, those gaps will actually be repellent to the person that you need to be with, because they won't pull you in a chord. They won't line up. And so, as just looking at it as a scientist, as frequencies, right? When things move out of harmony, they're discordant and they create nodal interfaces, and that actually drops the power of the entire system. So when you take, say, a card like Philip is saying, like the primal frequency card, you might want to go slowly with something like that, but that's probably the place to start. Is start at the base, work your way up, use what's going to enhance you in yourself. Figure out what the gaps are. I mean, you can look at the frequencies and say, I feel like I'm deficient in this, and focus on that first. And then once that's taken care of, then move to one of the other frequencies and either add that on or just swap it out. Like, I'll go through and I'll adjust, the level of consciousness for the day. Like, if I want it at a certain point, I'll keep it, at that point, and then maybe a little bit lower at night so I can rest and I'm not, amped up entirely all the time. And in accord with that, I kind of think that you'll want to take one, work out the gaps in yourself and the issues, and then move to the next, and then do the same thing. And I think over time you'll progress as a person, as an individual, as a consciousness. And that's my particular take on how best to integrate this into your life.
Yeah, thank you for that, both of you. I really love that, and I just want to add to that, because that's how I would have approached answering that as well. It's just think of yourself, as this frequency. Think we're all just frequencies. So what we're talking about here are ways that you can really, work on yourself. And by doing so, you're working on the field and everything around you and everyone that you love. So they're tools. I just want to remind everyone that it's not, I do supplements, right? So it's not like you take this supplement and it makes you whole. You take the supplement and then it fixes your workout. They're supported. So everything here is by design to support you in being your whole conscious, loving, beautiful self. And that can, and we live in this 3D world, and so it's sort of like that can go with the ebb and flow of the day. So, out of all these frequency cards, you may have a use for all of them at some point
Mhm.
in different points of your day, your month, your life, your journey. And so just sort of keep that in mind, because it's sort of an ever evolving thing to wholeness. And all of these, everything we're talking about here, they're tools. They're tools to just help support you to be you.
Well said.
Mhm. So, well, this has been, I love you guys. This has been
Love
super
you too.
amazing.
I missed both of you, actually.
Yeah,
Yeah.
these are the best.
All
I'm like,
hang in person.
yeah, I'm like, can we please? Like, we have to figure this out. I just,
I'm not going to share it now, but it's already in the works and it's going to be very soon and it's going to be awesome. You'll hear about it soon.
oh, we're all going to see each other? Wait, what?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Just yes to it and then we'll do it.
Okay, yeah. Okay, we're going to get off and figure that out. Like, today.
I
I'm
just
like,
saw a
wait.
comment, and someone said they want to create a suit out of the frequency cards. That would be
That's kind of
fantastic.
brilliant.
Sort
That's
of
sort of
like
brilliant.
a
Where you just like,
bulletproof suit for all things of malaise in the world.
mhm. You have like little pockets, and it's just like, I'm feeling like I need a little bit of self-love today. Throws it out.
She actually asked now how many she can actually carry at the same time. I think that's a smart question.
That is
Yeah.
a good question.
We've talked about it before. Yeah, let's.
Like, couldn't we create a frequency card where there's everything in it? Yeah, in theory, you can do that, but then it's not really going to do much because it's all about focus, right? So if you read a book, then you read that book. If you read 2 books at the same time, you're not going to be as focused. If you read 3 or 4 books, I mean, you're going to be completely distracted, and that's pretty much the same thing with frequencies. So there's some frequencies that go really well together, and then, for example, we have the prosperity and the abundance. So those would go really well. Or you have an inner peace and possibly the heal, right? Those also match up really well. But sometimes they don't really match up so well. Like, I don't know, for example, the sleep and rest frequency together with the focus frequency, right? Isn't make a lot of sense to combine them. And then also if you move into, more than 2 frequencies at the same time, it really starts to distract you. And we use the frequencies to help ourselves, right? Because we want, like I said, it's something, maybe I'm deficient on that, or I feel like today I feel more stressed. Like I wake up and I feel a little bit more stressed. So maybe the inner peace frequency is the right way to go. So I'll do that. But if I then also focus on all these other things, then I'm not really aligned with what I actually want to bring into balance. And then too many things working at the same time. So really, I always recommend just take one, at most take 2, and that's really, really not more.
Yeah, the analogy I always use when people ask me this is it's like a song. You're listening to a song. Maybe you can do a mashup between 2 songs and get something kind of cool and interesting. But if you do a lot more than 4 or 5 songs, that's just cacophony. And you don't really, nobody wants that because it's not pleasant to listen to. And that sort of disharmonious, chaotic field, we're just not built for that. It's better to just have 1 or 2 things that work really, really well and that you can enjoy.
Yeah, and also, it's again a tool that these are all tools to tune you into what you need. Like tuned in. Thank you so much for all of your support and your interest. And I know that there's going to be more questions, so just shoot them over to you, Philip, over at Leela Quantum, or both. Like they can send them over to Quantum Upgrade too, just anywhere.
Yeah, if they have questions, so I you really go to the Telegram group. That's someone could post the Telegram group links, or at least the one for the quantum power. And
Yes, we'll also
then
put it
that
in
is
our
a great.
posts.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll do that. I'm sorry about that. We've talked about it before, the Telegram group, and then it's on our YouTube. It's on our other videos. I would highly recommend, if you guys are kind of like new or you want to go back and get a refresh, go and watch the videos, and the links are all there, and you can and join us. So,
And
but
I'm
thank you
going
guys
fully analog, so you can just write me a letter, and I'll attach my address, and you can send it via snail mail.
Ah, I miss you. I love you guys. You guys
All
are
right.
the best.
Thanks so much,
Thank
everyone,
you
for
so
listening.
much.
Yeah. Thanks,
And
guys.
we'll talk.
Much love to everybody.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.